Toma de y me estoy recordando que make money.
This man in the middle is called Harvey Edwards. Mr. Edwards is about to have his brains removed, even though he might seem quite frustrated. In fact, he is the one who asked for this. Mr. Edwards paid these two kind gentlemen a small fortune to empty his skull. This brave man had only one purpose in life: to find out the universal truth and reveal the secrets behind the mystery of existence. Let us travel back and take a look at this great man's journey. At the age of 52, Mr. Edwards left his family and his job for his sacred cause. He traveled around the world in order to gather as much information for his goal. Outside the borders of the world societies, Mr. Edwards met a hunter named Charlie. Charlie was the guard at the gates of civilization. He was a courageous man and a great shooter too. Charlie told Mr. Edwards that if you want to find the truth, you must speak with the 7 spirit imbeciles, who are the best mediums in town. Mr. Edwards left in a hurry to find these 7 spirit imbeciles. But at the time he found them, they had accidentally summoned the devil, who took their souls a moment later. But luckily, the devil told him that he knew a man whose cousin had a chicken, and that chicken was the first chicken to travel beyond heaven and hell, in outer space. So it surely must have all the universal answers. Mr. Edwards got really excited and went to find this space chicken. When he finally met the chicken told him. But Charlie arrived sooner and shot the chicken in the head. Mr. Edwards is afraid that the truth died along with this chicken. But Charlie told him not to worry, because a friend of my uncle has a special magic koi fish that knows everything. But when Mr. Edwards arrived there, he only found a common goldfish that actually knew nothing. But the owner of the fish told him that met a man once who liked to torture his son, whose brother had a monkey who played the piano, and this monkey had a friend who was Indian, and this Indian had one night stand with Pocahontas and got her pregnant, and their bastard son told them. Only Patman knows the truth. So, Mr. Edwards went to meet Mr. Patman, who was retired from saving the world and fallen in love with an elephant. An elephant who was shot a moment later. In Batman as well. Mr. Edwards felt very angry with Charlie. But Charlie promised him that he will behave from now on and And there is no reason to worry, because I once traveled to Europe and met a French artist who discovered the truth, and as we speak he is painting the truth on a canvas. So, Mr. Edwards traveled all the way to Europe. But when he finally entered the painter's studio, he came face to face with the painter's two psychotic kids, who told him that their father was painting all the time and they got bored. So they stabbed a knife in his head and painted his last portrait on it. His psychotic daughter, though, told him that she knew a boy once who was a descendant of Napoleon the Great, whose sister was terrified of birds, who had a boyfriend who was a cop, whose older sister was an anarchist theoretician, and she knew two boys who said they were the sons of Marie Curie, whose little brother was a great philosopher, and told them that the only man who knows the truth is Santa Claus. So Mr. Edwards traveled far away to snowy mountains to find Mr. Claus. Sadly, by the time he arrived to North Pole, Mr. Claus was being arrested, as he was well known to the authorities as Santa the child molester, who also had no idea about the truth. So Mr. Edwards asked an officer where he could find what he was looking for. The officer told him that he met a prisoner once who liked to dress as an intellectual hack, and was a member of a group of weird gentlemen who wandered around the world in their underpants. And one of them had a Chinese friend who was a member of the Chinese version of the same group, whose grandfather knew an old man who had a very, very long beard, who was living up in the mountains with his cat and was very enlightened. So, Mr. Edwards left the town to find this wise man. Unfortunately, when he finally met him, the old man told him that he wasn't wise at all. He only grew all that beard to look like a ship captain, and to keep his cat warm. And in reality he wasn't smarter than a chicken. Still, he had a German neighbor who was a war spy, and he was convinced that this man could see the future. When Edwards visited his neighbor's house, the German spy ran off to fight the war, where as we speak, just got shot by a Russian sniper named Vasily Zaitsev. But he found a letter on his typewriter that said, "Dear sir, by the time you read this letter, I will be dead. If you want to find the truth, you must speak with a colored man who will refuse to go to the Vietnam War 15 years in the future. Hail Hitler." So Mr. Edwards waited 15 years. And finally, when the Vietnam War started, he started looking for the colored man they called the champion, who was no other than Muhammad Ali, who simply replied, "I don't give a damn about the truth, I am the greatest," but added later that the truth is in the mind of a great man called Martin Luther King. Mr. Edwards couldn't find Mr. King anywhere, but he met a Black Panther who guided him. But, unfortunately, by the time Mr. Edwards arrived at Mr. King's motel room, Mr. King had his last dream. But, outside the motel, Mr. Edwards met a lawyer, whose ancestor was the lawyer of the man who accused Galileo for heresy, whose son was a musician and also a great supporter of the feminism movement, who had a brother who was afraid of ghosts, whose best friend believed he was the King Arthur, who had 3 very tall sons, and one of them had a daughter with mustache, who told him, "The key to the truth are the 4 penguins." Edwards had a feeling that Charlie would appear and shoot the penguins, so he warned them, and told them to have a meeting at the orders. But when the penguins appeared, the guards of the orders mistaken them for illegal immigrants, so they arrested the poor birds. But before the penguins get arrested, they told Mr. Edwards that the truth is in the hands of Henry's Toulouse-Lautrec Russian cousin, who died last year, but before he died he told the truth to his cat. A cat who was a bestseller novelist and was about to release the truth in a book simply titled The Truth Behind the Truth Meow. But this book was stolen before it was printed by an evil genius named Nikola Tesla. When he finally met Mr. Tesla, he was too busy reading another book and didn't like to be disturbed. So he gave him a lamp and told him in order to find the universal truth, he must find the mysterious man on the bike, who was no other than Albert Einstein, who at the time was getting bored of the theory of relativity and spent his time cycling. Irrelevant fact but true. So he told him to visit another man who was known as the Master of Suspense, named Alfred Hitchcock, who also liked cycling. Mr. Hitchcock invited Mr. Edwards at his house to discuss about the truth and to meet his lion pet, Miss Ellie. But Miss Ellie the lion ate Mr. Hitchcock 3 seconds after this photograph was taken. So Miss Ellie sent Mr. Edwards to the circus to meet the crazy clown, whose wife was crazier, and slit his throat 2 days later, but eventually felt bad and grieved for him, wearing boxing gloves. But before Mr. Edwards gets there, he met a rabbit and a hedgehog, who told him that the elephant whose Mr. Batman was in love with introduced them once to a pigeon photographer, who told them the only one who knows the truth is the wise kangaroo. Sadly, by the time Mr. Edwards traveled to Australia, the wise kangaroo had already been married with a movie actress, and has stopped long ago his search of the truth. But the famous actress told him that she met a great Russian writer once, who could read people's soul, so he surely must have discovered the truth. As it turned out, the Russian author was no other than Fyodor Dostoevsky, who at the time was working at McDonald's and was paid shit. So he was living in a basement. Mr. Dostoevsky told him though that the only one who knows the truth is God, and he knows a man who spoke to him who comes with a nickname of Horse Lover, who, as Mr. Edwards soon discovered, he was no other than Mr. Friedrich Nietzsche, who told Mr. Edwards, God is dead. Life is shit. If you are looking for the truth, you must speak with a man who invented the portable TV. An invention which seems quite clear why this idea never reached mass production. But after watching too much TV, the great inventor decided to split his head in two. But before he did, he screamed, God. So Mr. Edwards thought that Mr. God might be alive after all. So he traveled at the edge of the world, climbed the highest mountains to find Mr. God. When he finally reached the clouds, he looked upon the skies and asked God for an answer. And God replied, fuck off. Read the Bible. Then another God replied, not the Bible, the Quran. And another one, none of these books tell the truth, read the Tanakh. Mr. Edwards suddenly felt confused and discouraged. He decided there is only one way to find out, so he jumped off the cliff. But, for his disappointment, one of the gods saved him. After he checked out of the hospital, he found these 2 gentlemen who promised to remove his brain for a small fee. Finally, here we are. This is his time of salvation. This man is about to meet.